Hello, it is I Smart, and welcome to a video where I'm going to be talking about a rumor. Yeah, so basically, there's been this rumor going around, and it's really surprised me, because it's come from like the very bottom of the Star Wars community. If you're not familiar, there's like the kind of like an iceberg, right? There's a top level of the Star Wars community where, you know, it's just regular content talking about whatever new Star Wars stuff there is. I'd put myself kind of out there, just regular Star Wars talk. Chill, we all love Star Wars here. Then there's kind of the middle. This is where I put like Star Wars Theory and those kind of channels, where it's still, you know, mostly like talking about Star Wars content, but it's almost entirely focused on hating on Disney, right? That's the main thing. They're always talking about how much they hate Disney. They find a way to mention it in every video. That's why I really don't like Star Wars Theory. He makes some good content, but almost always he has to complain about Disney and everything. It's just annoying. Then you have the very, very bottom, which is just that, but worse, where it's just these communities that do nothing but hate on Star Wars. Just anything Star Wars, even good stuff like Andor, they'll be like, it's terrible, it's awful because it's from Disney. It's like, oh my goodness. So there's a lot of bad in these communities. You know, if you probably occasionally see the thumbnails. Basically, here's how to make one. It's pretty easy. Boom, big explosion. Boom, Kathleen Kennedy's face, and then a buzzword like cringe, garbage, awful, or woke, whatever that means. All those different words that they'll use in a video, thumbnail, to say things like Star Wars is dead, or why Star Wars the sequels is a disaster, or why Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm is crumbling because of the woke leftist agenda. I don't know. They just say all these words that don't even mean anything. They just grab your attention. So these channels I really don't like. I think it's pretty obvious from the way I describe them. But they started this rumor. I don't even know it was one of the channels. Don't care. I don't want to name them by name. And I don't bother looking it up because I don't like them. Anyway. So they started a rumor, and it's kind of gotten to the top, which is weird. Usually these things stay at the bottom, all their stupid conspiracy theories or whatever. But one of them's actually gotten to the top, which is that George Lucas is going to buy back Star Wars. That's stupid, and I feel the need to explain why. I wouldn't normally talk about this, but I feel like I need to explain why this is incredibly stupid. This rumor. Basically, they're getting this idea from that Disney's in trouble. They got a lot of stuff going on with like the governor of Florida, if you're not familiar, is kind of like mad at Disney, and then they're arguing back and forth about stuff. I don't know. Disney's going through a lot of trouble right now. I don't feel like explaining it fully because I don't even understand it fully. But basically Disney's in trouble. That's all you got to know for this rumor specifically. So Disney's in trouble. They kind of extrapolate this to, well, if Disney's in trouble, they might sell Star Wars. And if they sell Star Wars, they might sell it to George Lucas. And if they sell it to George Lucas, well, like, it's like you're stretching this so far from Disney's having a little bit of financial trouble to George Lucas is going to buy back Star Wars and save everyone. Like, what? Where are you getting this from? It's really nothing more than wishful thinking, because this really is like the dream of these fans, these toxic Star Wars fans who do nothing but hate on Disney. Want, like, oh my gosh, I want George Lucas to come back and save us all from awful Kathleen Kennedy and Disney. Please, George Lucas, please come back and save us. Oh, the movies are so terrible. Please, George, you were always so amazing and we always loved you. Please come back. It's just so ridiculous. So I feel the need to explain why it is that George even sold to Disney in the first place. It was to spend more time with family. That was like a main reason. He knew if he made a sequel trilogy, which he wanted to do, that this would take up so much of his life and he wouldn't have time to spend with family. This is a huge point that these people just kind of ignore. The dude really didn't want to make Star Wars anymore. He wanted, to let it go, right? And that just makes sense. He was like almost 70 when he sold Star Wars. He's getting old. And now he's almost 80. You're thinking he's just going to go back on the decision now and just come back because why? It really doesn't make any sense. Like, we don't know George Lucas. I don't think anyone really does. I mean, I'm sure people do, but like in the Star Wars community, like none of us regular people really know him that well. I don't know. I occasionally hear like in a Star Wars Theory video, he says like, oh, I know people who like know George Lucas. So like, I know he hates the sequels. He says like really, bro? That's your argument? Trust me, bro. I know people who know George Lucas. Like, really? I don't like Star Wars Theory. Have I mentioned that yet? I don't like him. Anyway, but for the most part, he just wants to enjoy his life. That's what I understand, is that George Lucas just wants to enjoy pretty much the later years of his life. If he somehow bought it from Disney, what? Sure, let's say this happens. Let's just, hypothetical, never gonna happen situation where Disney sells to George Lucas. Okay, he starts working on a sequel trilogy, I guess. that replaces the current one, that's going to be super confusing for new Star Wars fans, and having there be 2 sequel trilogies, but whatever. So he starts making his new one. Okay. And then what? Like halfway through, what if he dies? He's pretty old. I hate to say it. I'm not hoping it happens, but like it could happen in the next couple of years. George Lucas is old. Like this is just something we have to accept. So if he dies, what then? He's not in charge of Lucasfilm anymore. Who takes over? One of his kids? Does Kathleen Kennedy come back? What I don't understand. What's the outcome here? I don't see how this works. Disney's just gonna keep Star Wars. They're just gonna keep it. They're not gonna sell it. It's their biggest thing right now. And these channels will want to make you believe that Star Wars is dying, but it isn't. It really isn't. We got so much great Star Wars stuff. Like we just got Jedi Survivor. We got tons of other great Star Wars games in the pipeline, and not just games, but we got Andor. We're gonna get season 2 of that, which I'm really hoping is gonna be good. And then we're gonna get the Ahsoka series. Not really looking forward to that, but that should be cool. We're getting the Acolyte series at some point. So there's a lot of great stuff in the pipeline. Star Wars is far from dead. I don't know why people want to say that. It's just a fancy buzzword, because they made movies that are kind of bad. Clearly, Star Wars is dead. Like what? Star Wars is more alive now than it's ever been. There are more Star Wars fans now than there's ever been. Star Wars is in the best place it's ever been. Seriously. Think about it. Think about when George Lucas sold to Disney. Star Wars was not in a good place. Star Wars then, you could even say, was dead, maybe. Because after the prequels, nobody liked George Lucas. Nobody liked Star Wars. Again, people forget about this point because there's so much praise for George Lucas these days. I think some of it is undeserved. Now, don't get me wrong. George Lucas created Star Wars. For that, I will be eternally grateful to him. He created something that's so special to me, right? I love Star Wars. Look, I love Star Wars. I think it's pretty obvious I love Star Wars. You can call me a fake fan because I like the sequels, but I don't care. I'm a Star Wars fan. But I have some problems with George Lucas. I think people give him too much credit. Because, sure, he did create Star Wars, but he alone did not create Star Wars, right? He, created so many of the original concepts for the original trilogy, but he alone didn't create it. There were tons of other people involved in the process of creating the original trilogy, and why that turned out so great. There was different directors, there was plenty of writers. It wasn't solely George Lucas. He was the main thing. Don't get me wrong, but to say it was solely him is really not true. The prequels were more so solely George Lucas, and that's why I think they go too far in a few places. So, I'm not really a big fan of the prequels, and a lot of Star Wars fans that were at the time. Actually, a majority of people didn't like the prequels when they came out. I don't know why everyone just forgets this these days, or thinks like, oh, they just didn't understand, they were always a masterpiece. It's not true. The prequels are not good. Sorry to burst your bubble. They aren't, and they're still not good movies. And they were hated at the time. Star Wars fans hated George Lucas. So imagine yourself in George Lucas's shoes, right? You create the prequels, everyone hates him, everyone's like, stupid George Lucas, you ruined Star Wars, you're awful. So he sells to Disney saying, fine, not my problem anymore. And now he's watching as all these Star Wars fans are like, oh my gosh, George Lucas, we need you back. We always loved you. It's like, huh? What is this? Huh? Just because Disney made movies now? Huh. I think it's just whoever's in charge of Star Wars is always going to have to deal with these fans. So I think the best thing to do is just do what Disney did. Ignore them, okay? All they're going to do is complain every time you do anything. Now, sure, are there valid problems with the sequel trilogy? Yes, but those have been well documented. What good does it do to spend an entire decade complaining about how Disney has run Star Wars? That does no good. You're a Disney person. You work at Disney in Star Wars or Lucasfilm, whatever, and you see that all these people hate your movies, right? But you look at their arguments, and so much of it just falls down to it's woke, it's terrible. It's like, huh? Because 2 gay characters kissed in The Rise of Skywalker, like for 2 seconds on screen, only one of them actually getting speaking lines in the movie? These literal background characters kissed, and that ruins the movie, right? You see this argument is pretty much entirely invalid. Like, that's why Disney ignores these fans, and I think why you should too, because that's ultimately what a lot of their arguments come down to. It's stuff like that ruins their credibility. Again, there are valid problems with the sequels. There are valid problems with the prequels. There are valid problems with the original trilogy. Whoa, there are problems in movies? Wow. It's just, this hate on Star Wars does no good to anyone. Hate is not a good thing. It doesn't do anyone any good. There's really no point. Now you might be saying, well, what about all these channels I mentioned earlier at the very beginning? The reason these channels hate on Star Wars so much is because it gets them views. Because there's so many Star Wars fans that will watch every single video they make talking about how Star Wars is dying and Star Wars is awful and Kathleen Kennedy ruined everything. They will watch every single video. And these channels know that. That's why they keep making these videos and why they keep spreading these rumors. It brings more attention to them and gives them more views. So don't do it. Don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into hate. I almost did myself. I almost became a sequel hater. I was a sequel hater for some time, being like, oh, these movies are so terrible. I'll watch this entire video essay talking about why the sequels are terrible. Don't you know the sequels are awful? You can't like the sequels. And then I just realized, why? What good does that do? There are so many kids that love the sequel characters, right? Well, what, are you going to go out to, you see a little girl wearing a Rey shirt, you're going to go bully her because she likes the sequels? No, that's ridiculous. Plenty of people, including myself, have learned to love the sequels. Or have just always loved the sequels. They're good movies. You know, they have their value. Like any movie. Like the prequels, like the original trilogy, there's stuff to love in the sequels and in the things Disney creates. Star Wars is special, and that will never not be true. I don't think Star Wars is ever really going to die. Maybe, you know, in the far, far future. But in my lifetime, I don't think it's going to happen. Star Wars is not dead. Star Wars is alive and well. And the Star Wars community is alive. So just don't hate. That's my message. Don't be a hater. Don't go around telling people they're wrong for liking the sequels. Just enjoy them. Is George Lucas going to come back and save Star Wars? No. But I don't think it needs to be saved. Star Wars is great. And it's in a great place. And that's what I want to talk about today. Star Wars. I love it, and I hope you do too. So don't hate it. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do anyone do any good. Okay, that's it. Total rant over. IR Smart rants. I love these. These are fun. If not a little, you know, depressing to think about when you need to think about the grand scheme of the Star Wars fanbase, but, you know, it's still fun to get it all out in a video. I think I need to stop talking now. Anyway, this is the end of the video. Bye.